For this bookcase I'm building, I need to make a series of notches like this to hold these slats. And I was thinking about the best way to do it, whether to just chisel everything out or if there is a more simpler way. And I have an idea that I want to try. I'm not sure if it's going to work, but I'm going to show you what I attempt. I came up with the idea of making a saw with a really thick blade so that I can just cut these kerfs at the exact width they need to be and then just insert the slats. So I bought 5 of these replaceable Japanese saw blades, and I want to try and pin them all together and then make a handle for it. So I'll have just one thick saw, really thick saw. But to do this, first I have to drill a hole through the blades, and that requires some spot annealing of the place where I want to drill a hole for the pin to hold all the blades together. And I'm going to do this by taking a nail and cutting the head off it, and then putting it in my drill press and turning it over the spot where I want to make the hole. That'll create heat through friction and hopefully anneal just that part of the blade. Now, I had only heard about this technique and I never tried it myself, and what I found is that with my drill press, because it's a little cheap thing, it doesn't hold the nail solid enough to prevent it from wandering when it touches the flat metal plate of the saw. I tried this a couple of times, but it wanted to wander and the balance got all off and it just was not working. I wasn't generating any heat at all. So after looking at the marks that the nail put on the saw blade, I figured I could probably drill through it at least once with one of the good metal bits that I have for metal. So I put some drilling oil on it and I tried that and it worked, and I was able to drill through all 4 or 5 of the saw blades. I can't remember how many I put together here, and it worked. Of course, this pretty much dulled the drill bit, and I was not able to do that for the holes that I needed to drill in for the handle. So I decided to anneal the back of the blade using a torch, handheld torch. You can see it's smoking here. I'm done heating it up to nice cherry red, and I'm going to let it sit in the open air and cool naturally so that that part of the blade will anneal. And this worked fine, and I was able to drill the hole I needed. After that, I cut a brass pin and I put it through that hole, and I proceeded to peen over the ends. Now, this is another mistake I made. I was trying to rush through this build and get it done quickly in a couple hours so that I could use the saw instead of spending all day making it. And of course, I cut off the brass pin a little too long on both sides. So as I was peening this over, both sides started to mushroom, and then a little bit of the brass broke off on one side of the pins. And, well, all in all, it came out pretty ugly. I would like to go back and make another one, but like I said, this is just a tool that I need for this particular project, so I'm not really too worried about how it looks. The next part of the process was to make a rudimentary handle. So I took my marking gauge and I laid out some lines in the middle, much like I would do if I was going to be cutting a tenon. And this is going to be for the slot that the blade is going to fit into. Off camera, I drilled a hole through the block while it was still square. This is really an important tip, actually, if you've never made any knife handles or anything like that. It's always best to, if you can, drill the holes while the block is square, so that way you know that the hole is straight and perpendicular, and everything will line up perfectly. So after doing that, I cut this long slit in the handle in which the blades will be inserted, and I cut it the same way as I would any other tenon. If you don't know how to do that, you can check out some of my videos or some other videos online by Paul Sellers, etc. There's a lot of info on there on the YouTube on how to do this really neat and correctly. The next step was to turn the handle on the lathe to make it fit nicely in your hand. I have relatively large hands, so the handle turned out to be pretty robust and pretty ugly, if I'm to be honest. I'm not a really great turner. I'm still in the process of learning a lot of those techniques. But anyway, it'll do the job, and it fits in your hand, it feels good. So what more can you ask for, right? So after a quick rub down with some friction polish, this was the end result. So I put another brass pin through the handle to secure the blade, and then I cut off the excess on both sides and peened it over, making sure this time not to leave too much on either side. I used a file to smooth that out a little bit against the handle, and this is what I ended up with. It's not the prettiest thing I've ever made by far, but I think it will get the job done. I gave it a test run on a piece of cherry, which is the same type of wood that I'm using for the bookcase I'm building, and it cut beautifully. Didn't clog at all. I had no problem starting the cut, and it looks like it's going to work perfect. The thickness of the blade is just the exact thickness of the slats that I have made for the same project. So I'm happy with how it came out. It's not too pretty, but like I said, it gets the job done. Hope this helps somebody. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.